Hello, everyone. We'll give it just a minute to let people continue to join, and then we'll get started. Okay, so hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. On behalf of the Environmental Finance Center Network, welcome to today's webinar on empowering community voices for blue-green infrastructure in the Chollas Creek Watershed. My name is Owen Volk from the Syracuse University Environmental Finance Center. Before we begin, we're going to go over a few logistics, and then we can get started. During the webinar today, everyone will be kept on mute to ensure audio quality. If you have a question, please type it in the GoToWebinar question dialog box anytime throughout the session. We will be saving your questions for a facilitated Q&A session at the end of the presentation. After the webinar, you will receive a follow-up email that includes a link to the recording and other information that you may need. You can also download the slides from today in the Handouts tab in your GoToWebinar control panel. This webinar has not been submitted for pre-approval of continuing education credits, but eligible attendees will receive a certificate of attendance for their personal record. To receive a certificate for this section, you must attend for the entire session and register and attend individually using your real name and unique email address. Certificates will be sent via email within 30 days of the webinar date. If you have questions or need assistance, please contact smallsystems@syr.edu. Now for a little bit about us. The Environmental Finance Center Network provides training and technical assistance to small water and wastewater systems in all U.S. states and territories through our building technical, managerial, and finance capacity programs. If your community or utility needs assistance with drinking water or wastewater system management, please feel free to contact us through our request form, which I will be sharing shortly in the chat. One of the many ways EFCN can support your community or utility is through our free funding application support. Struggling with an infrastructure funding application? Falling short on project funding? Not sure where to start? EFCN is here to help. Submit a request through the link in the chat to receive tailored support based on your project needs. And on that note, we can get started. I would like to introduce our presenters for today. April Mendez, CEO of Greenprint Partners, my apologies. Jacinta Hinojosa, Brian Flagmore, and Howard Quaresma, all resident fellows at Groundwork San Diego. Welcome to you all, and April, I will hand it over to you.
Sounds good. Thanks so much, Owen. I'm going to go ahead and get my screen shared, and good afternoon, everyone. We're so excited to have you with us today and to share with you one of my favorite programs to have worked on over the past couple of years, a resident empowerment training program for residents in the Chollas Creek set of communities within the city of San Diego. And my hope for today is that everyone on the call will see today as an opportunity to reflect on a fundamental question of how we can build the most generative partnerships with community members, with resident leaders around developing water infrastructure programs, and shift what has kind of traditionally been a dynamic of communities seen as kind of a barrier to be overcome, potentially a risk in getting projects developed, in some cases kind of antagonistic advocates for their own priorities who don't really understand the challenges of what public agency staff members are trying to advance, and to shift that model from thinking about communities as a risk to involve in our projects towards towards seeing community members and community partners as allies that can really help us achieve far more than we would have achieved on our own, and achieve a much stronger impact that really takes into account lived experience, and also leverages the power of social networks, the power of momentum and enthusiasm that can develop on the ground when residents really understand the potential benefits of the types of projects that we're advancing. And, you know, it requires kind of a willingness to be held accountable, to be transparent, and to be kind of walking side by side with people who are going to ask really smart questions, and say, you know, these aren't the things that we actually prioritize. These aren't the things that we actually need in shifting in the way that projects are approached. So what I've got for you today, I can get my slides to advance here, is a pretty simple setup. I'm going to go over the design of the program and a bit of context on the program, and then we have 3 of the residents who participated in this program who will share their reflections on their experience of going through the program, the kind of impact that they're seeing that they're able to have through this work, and then we'll shift into a robust Q&A period. So just really encourage everybody to put your questions in. We are going to have time to take many questions towards the end of the full session. So please do that. Okay, so the program that I'm speaking to is a partnership between Groundwork USA, and Groundwork San Diego, Chollas Creek, which is the local chapter of Groundwork USA. And Groundwork USA is a network of community-centered nonprofits that work at the intersection of people, places, and systems to build healthier and more resilient neighborhoods. And then Greenprint Partners, which is the firm that I'm representing, we're an award-winning consulting firm that specializes specifically in community-centered environmental infrastructure, and really to kind of take a community organizing-centered approach to the way that we work with infrastructure projects and programs. And that's my background as CEO for the company, and one of the co-founders, actually as a community organizer, is the majority of my career before helping to start Greenprint. So before we jump in with our content, we want to get a sense of where you're at. So we're going to do polling using a platform called Slido. And you can join this either using the QR code, use your phone to scan that, your camera to scan that, or you can go to slido.com and enter this code 276312, and then go ahead and answer our first poll question. It looks like we've got 12 respondents so far. Owen, can you tell me how many folks we actually have on the line right now?
Yeah, we have 49.
Okay, great. Keep on hopping into that poll, folks. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and see where we're at. So the question is, to what extent have you worked with community leaders on infrastructure projects? Looks like the majority of our respondents have sometimes worked with community leaders. A pretty good number of you have worked extensively with community leaders on infrastructure projects. That's great to hear, because the program model that you're going to hear about today is a pretty intensive one. So will probably be a good next step for you to consider with the work that you're doing, having been pretty extensive already. And then a pretty even split of often, rarely, or not at all. Great. And we'll move to another poll question, which is, to what extent did working with community leaders, for those of you who did do that, to what extent did that facilitate project implementation? Meaning, was it kind of a positive net impact on the implementation of the project? All right, great. So it looks like folks are pretty positively disposed towards community leader involvement. That working with community leaders had a positive impact often is the majority, is the top answer. Sometimes and extensively, rarely and not at all, are barely showing up on the map here. So that's great to see that we're at least getting some positive impact out of partnership with community leaders. Okay, and then the next question is, what do you see as the greatest challenges in engaging communities effectively? And we provided 5 different options for you, and we'll ask you to rank those in order of importance, with 1 being the greatest challenge and 5 being the least challenging. All right, let's see where we're landing here. Got a couple people still ranking. All right, so biggest challenge is the lack of resources or funding for meaningful engagement. Next biggest, pretty close second, is a lack of trust between communities and government or project teams. Third challenge is difficulty reaching all community members. And then lower than that is language or cultural barriers. It looks like 5 did not show up on the list at all. All right, and our final question is, where do you see the greatest potential benefit from engaging community members in infrastructure projects? And we want your top choice, greatest potential benefit, to be number 1, and least potential benefit is number 5. All right, so greatest potential is to design solutions that better reflect community needs, and a pretty close second is improving long-term project success and sustainability. There's some benefit potential from number 3, building community trust and support. Sounds like people have had some mixed experiences there. And similarly to that is strengthening partnerships with local organizations. And finally, reducing conflict or opposition to projects is seen as a potential benefit, but the lowest of these. Great. So fellows, as you all are thinking about your reflections for later on or some of the Q&A that you might get, I just encourage you to think about these particular the ways that people have ranked here. And it seems like in particular building community trust and support is a bit of a challenge. And so maybe be prepared to talk a bit about how this program has helped to build that community trust and support. All right. Okay, so I'll give a little bit of background on the program and the kind of the need for this program. So the program takes place in the Chollas Creek Watershed within the city of San Diego. It's a population area of about 220,000 folks just within the San Diego city limits portion of the watershed. It's majority community of color, 39% Hispanic, 36% African American, 12% Asian, 13% white, a mix of languages spoken, 5 leading community planning groups, so a pretty decent amount of social infrastructure to be able to leverage those resident groups. There's been a bit of a kind of storied history around the community planning groups feeling not well resourced enough by the city, not listened to enough by the city, not collaborated with enough by the city. That was kind of the part of the impetus for developing this program. Is there is a gap in community trust and community collaboration, and there have been some pretty strong feelings about how the city is approaching work from a siloed perspective and doing, a streets project over here that's not connected to potential greening opportunities or not connected to potential stormwater management opportunities, and not connected as well to the resident priorities. And so groundwork, San Diego Chollas Creek as a whole has been trying to advocate towards and really come alongside the city in partnership in a way that helps to encourage collaboration, encourage more whole project thinking, and do the hard work of getting residents to the table for those conversations. And the community planning groups have been a big part of that, and they are members of the Chollas Creek Coalition. And so there's been a lot of organizing infrastructure that's been built around all of these groups. This particular area faces some pretty significant socioeconomic threats. It's the city of San Diego's largest underserved population, historic disinvestment and redlining, has the greatest environmental inequities in the city, and also the greatest economic inequities, which means that residents are least likely to be able to afford the costs of things like rising temperatures and flooding. And that dovetails with the environmental threats that this community has faced. And in particular, there was a 1,000-year storm on January 22nd of 2024 that produced massive flooding and damage to resident homes and businesses, and people were really forced to kind of restart their lives in many cases. In addition, there's surface water impairment in Chollas Creek, and there are challenges with extreme heat, where summer heat is producing temperatures that are between about 2 degrees and 9 degrees Fahrenheit higher than in the rural surroundings. And so there are kind of some heat hot spots. It's a heavily paved neighborhood, not nearly as green as other parts of San Diego. And so residents have been advocating for more tree canopy, more shade space, more access to green spaces and waterways. And so this empowerment training program comes in the context of that. Groundwork, San Diego, Chollas Creek had decided that what they wanted to do was to create a training program that would really put stronger knowledge, access, understanding, power into the hands of residents. And so the purpose of this training program was to build the capacity of 20 emerging community leaders, specifically to lead on a kind of intersectional approach to water infrastructure that took into account both the need to manage flooding with the blue infrastructure side of things and to increase green space within the community while managing water quality issues with green infrastructure. So there was a kind of combination of blue and green concepts that we needed to bring in for this program. And the intent was to kind of empower residents to understand what blue-green infrastructure is, understand how it can apply to different specific spaces within their neighborhoods, to understand how the city works and how they can best collaborate with city staff and city leaders, and help to usher in a new vision for multi-benefit, multifaceted, multidimensional blue and green infrastructure throughout the city. And we did bring in some additional training partners here, CityWorks, whose logo is not showing up in a very lovely way there, and Econico, that focuses on community organizing methodologies. So CityWorks, Greenprint, and Econico were the lead trainers for the program. So I already spoke a bit to the objectives, but we're equipping residents to shape blue-green infrastructure in their neighborhoods. We're improving public agency and community collaboration in climate resilience and watershed planning. And ideally, we're offering a replicable community engagement model for agencies. Hopefully, some of you all would be interested in picking up a model like this, and we'd be absolutely thrilled to be able to talk to you more about it if you'd like a side conversation. So participation in the program, we had 20 participants across 9 neighborhoods. Those participants committed to 8 sessions, 2 hours each over 4 months. So a total of 16 hours of training. They were paid just about $600 for their participation, which equates to a $37.50 an hour wage. And so that was really important to Groundwork, that residents were paid well for the time that they were spending on this program. And we kept it at $5.99 to keep it under that taxable cap. Qualifications for the kinds of folks that we were looking to recruit. We needed to find people who were able to commit to all of the workshops. We needed to have residents who had real knowledge of the community. So those are residents or full-time members of the community, someone who spends the majority of their time in the community. Like perhaps they work in the community, perhaps they know the community well, and a number of other factors, and they needed to be within a particular neighborhood within the Chollas Creek Watershed. From a diversity perspective, we were looking for folks to reflect the cultural, linguistic, racial, generational, and other identity diversity of the community. And while this wasn't a requirement, we'd set up the program so that there was going to be a follow-on opportunity to be employed as a resident organizer for a year following this program. So in order to get one of those organizing fellowships, you had to have completed this 4-month training program. The curriculum for the program had these 7 modules to it. That started with an orientation and kickoff, where we focused on just building some understanding and bonds between the fellows and getting people connected to their why, their personal why for their participation in the program and their work in the community. So we focused on building strong bonds. We used Marshall Ganz's work on creating a story of self, story of us, story of now. That would be the kind of a motivating story that people could hold on to throughout difficult times in doing this work. We had people take those story of self, story of us, story of now, and create a personal cover. Sorry if I just cut out my my phone to cut in. they created like a personal collage for their program binder that encapsulated that story. The second module was green stormwater infrastructure. We actually expanded that to blue-green infrastructure. So they were learning about the significance of blue and green infrastructure and its potential for creating climate resilience. Then sessions 3 and 4 focused on meaningful public participation. So this is training residents in, in what it would look like for them to create meaningful public participation, not just for them to be engaged themselves by public agencies in projects and programs. They had to kind of adopt the lens of, okay, now I'm a leader in my community, helping to facilitate participation from other residents in these projects and their design. And then we did power analysis and campaign planning, trying to understand, who do we need to influence and how do we need to influence them in order to get these projects to happen in the way that we want them to happen. And then developing community outreach and engagement plans. One of the key tools that we use, and this is something that CityWorks trained on, is the Spectrum of Public Participation by the International Association for Public Participation. If you don't know them, please look them up. They are excellent and their resources are phenomenal. This is one of the most often cited. This spectrum gives you a sense of the different degrees to which you can engage public participation. And it's really helpful to get you to clarify how much participation you're really looking for and how much power you are willing to give. And there's reasons to choose any of these pieces of the spectrum. So on the left-hand side, you have inform. So you're just going to inform the public with balanced and objective information. All the way over to empower on the right-hand side, which is to place final decision-making into the hands of the public. So the promise that you're making there is we will implement what you decide. And then there are pieces obviously in between there, which is where most projects, I would say, end up falling either on the consult, involve, or collaborate end of the spectrum. As you move up the spectrum, obviously you are empowering residents more and inviting more of a space of community as ally in the project. So we trained on this, and it was interesting to see the residents grappling with this in the same way that you see city kind of public officials grappling with it and saying, well, do these folks, do they know enough about the project to be able to, make the final decisions on it? Or should we have them, just be consulted? Who do we want to just consult? Who do we want to have involved? And so that, the same conversation was playing out in both places. And then I would say that the heart of the program was that this was really project-based. So residents in the very first session brainstormed project sites in their neighborhood that they wanted to see blue-green infrastructure implemented in. And then they formulated teams around those project sites, and those became their projects for the duration of the 2 months. And over the course of the 2 months, they assessed the strengths and weaknesses of what was happening with that project, what that site, what they would like to see happen on that site, who the community is that interacts with that site, that is impacted by that site, how they would want to engage that community. They put together a community engagement public participation plan that they were going to lead on that site. And we also did concept plans. So our Green Prints team of engineers worked with the residents from each of those teams and created a couple of iterations of conceptual designs for each project. So you see one example here that was a pocket park. And there's another iteration of that conceptual plan. So this was fun because the residents got to go through a full kind of conceptual design process with engineers on retainer who serve them, rather than having the city kind of lead the project and just decide whether, when and how to consult residents. The residents were actually acting as the city staff typically would in this case. And then as the program wrapped up, we did a graduation, and then hired 4 fellows into year-long paid roles. And that their roles had them then continue on with a process that what that turned into is the Chollas Creek Blue-Green Vision. This is an ongoing collaborative now. There's the Chollas Creek Blue-Green Collaborative that's about 65 members. That's inclusive of all of the major public agencies, city departments, Caltrans, the SANDAG, the San Diego kind of Planning Commission, and the resident leaders who sit intentionally at each of the tables and kind of host the conversation, and are kind of always prepared to give their perspective and their key questions in the course of the conversation, as we shifted from just thinking about this broad concept of blue-green infrastructure to developing a formulated vision for blue-green infrastructure for the entirety of the watershed. And we're now in the process of mapping out all of the sites within the watershed that are good candidates for blue-green infrastructure, developing conceptual plans for some of them, doing a lot of fundraising around project implementation. And this effort has been just an extraordinary exemplar of breaking down those silos. And it's been great to see the city staff and the public agency staff come to convening after convening after convening, really energetically engaged, and seeing possibilities for how these projects could get done in collaboration that they just hadn't seen before. So just some really tangible impact that is ongoing from this program. Okay, now enough from me. Let's turn things over to a few of the resident fellow leaders, and I'll turn it first over to Brian Flagmore.
Hey everybody, my name is Brian Flagmore. I'm a resident fellow with Groundwork San Diego. With the resident empowerment training, the most important parts of it for me personally were learning how local government works, and the capital improvement project system in San Diego, as well as helping to find a local consensus with residents. And through those things, we're able to find where we can kind of exert ourselves in a more effective way. And an example of that was, as April was talking about the projects at the end, my project was called Stream View. It's a mile-long street in my neighborhood, which is almost 200 feet wide, and it's a heat island, it's a dumping ground, and there's flooding issues. And the city had a project plan that was mostly stormwater and some roundabouts to help alleviate some of the stuff on there. But the residents really wanted some trees in this area because it's been measured at around, I think it was taken 130 degrees in that area on hot days with the surface temperature. And we knew that trees needed to be a part of it. And through being able to build a consensus and rally the neighbors, we were able to eventually get it so that the city, after several iterations of plans, came through with almost 100 trees in the area, and the project starts this year. So we're really excited about that. But also through being able to make ourselves present, the city also realized that it's really important that we, the residents and the resident leaders, are not only informed about projects early on, but are also now, the city's using us to be part of the early planning process with community outreach. And this is so far going really well, where there's huge projects that through our training, we understand to a certain degree what's going on as far as the blue-green and the multi-benefits. And we are to be the people who come to the community and ask what they want and to relay that to the city. So we're starting to be part of the early stages. And I think that through this, we're going to be able to like really have less opposition to these projects further down the road because the residents aren't feeling like they're being involved. And I think in this way, everybody kind of feels like they're getting something that they really want out of it. And that's what's really important. The residents, they just want to feel like they're being heard. And the other thing I wanted to talk about a little is the collaboration that April brought up. With having one of us, the leaders at each of the tables with the department heads and the agency leaders, we were able to remind them of what it looks like on the ground as a resident, but also to ask out of the box questions, because sometimes when you're planning projects, when you're thinking about agendas, you're thinking kind of just straightforward and this is how we get this done. But sometimes you might miss out on some of the I don't know, the aspects that people might just see from an outside point of view. And so in San Diego or in California, some of the water quality control board rules are being rewritten. And we were trying to talk about potential funding sources for our neglected watershed. And one of the things is that on-site mitigation of stormwater is not really working because one, it doesn't work very well, and also two, it's very expensive for developers to take part in. And so we were thinking, oh, what about being able to pay these fees to do off-site mitigation in the storm or within the watershed, and then we can have a revenue stream for the projects we're working on. But it was pointed out that there's not a lot of development happening in our watershed, and so it would be very minimal. But just me sitting there, I'm kind of a map nerd. I know our watershed really well, and I realized that the Chollas Creek Watershed isn't considered its own watershed on a big picture. It's part of the Pueblo watershed into the northern part of San Diego Bay, which includes uptown and downtown in San Diego. And these are where there's a lot of development going on. And I said, hey, what if we could do the entire Pueblo watershed as part of this? And they all looked at each other and said, yeah, I don't see why not. So now we're working on a potential real funding stream for these projects. And I think it just going through the process of starting out, going through training, becoming a fellow, having a seat at the table, and then being able to be included in these conversations, I think that we can be pretty useful to be there. So yeah, that's my point of view on this, and I'm very thankful for the training that we received.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Brian. And I hope folks are putting questions into the Q&A for Brian so he can hop back on when we get to Q&A. Next, we'll turn to Howard.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Howard Quaresma, and I am a resident fellow with Groundworks. And yeah, you know, April really touched on every single aspect of the program. And yeah, San Diego's a beautiful city, but there is a lot of disparity in our city, and I just wanted to say, you know, my experience with the resident empowerment program has been very eye-opening. We were taught how to start brainstorming a project and actually seeing this project come all the way through the city, through various city departments, and we were able to see actual projects come to reality. Without the program, I mean, I'm sure I wouldn't have been able to accomplish some of the things that we have accomplished as a team. It also very informative. A lot of different information came through. A lot of the first group of participants, it was our first time being exposed to this information, so It was really, really informative. It was a well-rounded program. It was really, really thought from start to finish to help. I feel to help communities in San Diego that have been underserved for a really long time, including my community of Mountain View. Also, us being the first group, a lot of our ideas were valued, and so that just excited, that got me excited about trying to help change some of the things and behaviors that were happening in our community for so long. I feel the participants of the program were a very crucial part of the success. Just like for myself, I live in Mountain View in Southeast San Diego, and again, this neighborhood has been underdeveloped for a really, really, really long time. I grew up here, and I feel how the program chose residents in these impacted communities. I feel that helped tremendously with the success of the program. I was part of the Ocean View project. It was and so again, this project at one of our first sessions, we just brainstormed projects that would be great to have in our neighborhoods. And I mean, at the beginning, it was just like a dream, just because I've been used to the city not investing in my community for so long that for me it was just a dream, right? Like, wow, wouldn't it be awesome if there was this here? Wouldn't it be awesome if there were more trees planted here and on Ocean View Boulevard? And so being part of the program, that project impacted my life in a major way. Also, the program impacted my life by helping me connect with different officials. Also, I am part of the Southeast San Diego planning group. So we meet monthly, and again, I feel my voice is being heard. It also shined a big bright light on Mountain View, which again, it's been underdeveloped for so long. Another impact of the project in my life is just feeling proud about my community, having my family be proud of me being a part of a project like this. I do have two kids, and maybe it could spark something in them where they want to pursue a career in engineering or city development. So it impacted my life a lot. Another aspect is just the tangible projects that we were able to complete being part of the empowerment program. Um, and then yeah, just like building relationships with our resident fellows like Brian and Jacinta. I mean, we all come from these neighborhoods again that have been for a long time underserved, and we just we just understand, and we're just passionate about it. um Also, I was chosen as one of the 4 fellows to continue with the program, and so that opened even more doors where again, I feel like my voice is being heard, and when I say my voice, I mean like all of I feel like all of Mountain View, like I just try to represent the neighborhood of Mountain View, and it's just been a really, really refreshing and really, really proud moment. And so some of the roles of that the program has played in inspiring community change via blue-green infrastructure are that the program has inspired community leaders and city officials to partner up and connect with each other. We've also ID'd improvement projects that we both are on the same page about. So city officials and us and Groundworks are identifying projects that need attention and having our voices be heard is just really impactful. Some of the projects that are in the works are like April mentioned earlier. So pocket parks, we do tree planting events. We have a Earth Lab, which focuses on youth and green spaces, community events. We are also partnered with community groups like the Southeast San Diego group, tree canopy projects. And so, again, if it wasn't for this program, a lot of these projects would have never been considered. Another thing that is really important, I wanted to mention the storm on January 22nd of 2024. It did impact most of the southeast part of San Diego. So it impacted the neighborhoods that have been historically underserved. And so in January of 22nd, when we had the 1,000-year storm, it impacted us the most. And so that was a big wake-up call, I feel, for us, for the city, and for any community member that wants to see their community improve. And since then, with the help of Groundwork and this program, I feel like the city officials now they get it, right? They get it. They know that that this is not how it's supposed to be, right? And so now you start hearing a lot of officials ask questions as to why is this neighborhood not funded the same as this other neighborhood in San Diego, right? San Diego is a beautiful city, but again, there's a lot of disparity. And I feel that if it wasn't for Groundwork and this program and us fellows, we would have never seen or been or be where we are now, where I can drive down the street on Ocean View every, when I go to work, and I'm able to see, trees planted. A project that was first, it was just a brainstorm session, and by the end of the resident empowerment program, it's an actual real project that I could see as I go, to work every day. And I've been so blessed to be a part of it, and I'm just inspired, and I'm just ready to keep going, and just it's been a great program, and I would recommend if anyone is in your cities, if the same thing is happening where there's disparity, and you feel that is not how things are should be, implementing something like this is it's gonna make a huge impact on communities that need it. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Howard. That was so inspiring. I loved just how real the imagery got for us at the end to see you going through that, to feel what that must have felt like to go through the process of going from a place where, a project was just an idea, just a brainstorm in a room to, trees that you can see got planted as you're driving past or walking past. Wonderful. So let's turn to Jacinta. And Jacinta, I've got your slide up too for the Castana Street project.
Hi, my name is Jacinta.
Yep, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Hi, my name is Jacinta, and Jacinta Hinojosa, and I'm one of the fellows for Chollas View. And I've been here living in my community for more than 15 years. And this program, this resident empowerment training program has been,
Jacinta, do you mind turning on your camera?
yes. Can you see? Oh.
Yep. Okay, now we can see. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jacinta Hinojosa, and I'm a fellow for Groundwork San Diego for my community Chollas View. And this program has been a blessing, a learning experience. I joined this program, this training, resident empowerment training, because of my son. He was a Y, and it makes me emotional because with this not being able to be with this program, I wouldn't have learned all this city officials, government, and I started by going to one of the Earth Lab community, Earth Lab with my son, and he just signed me. And I'm like, I don't know anything about hydroponics. I was just there to volunteer with my son to help clean and maintain that many families go and maintain the Earth Lab. And from there, Groundwork San Diego sent a flyer to go for trails. And I'm like, I didn't know we have trails in my community. My son was, why don't we have good trails with green canopies? And we have to drive far to just go for hiking. And sorry, from there, I got the opportunity to register for the resident empowerment training. And it's been a fundamental base because I didn't know anything about this, and I'm still learning. This opportunity teach me a lot about green infrastructure and the benefits could make a community just have a better living space, environment, and learning opportunities, because they could, as the youth, they're the future, and they should know that take care about this environment and what can you do as a community. It doesn't matter your position, but as a community resident, you could make a lot of difference. And this program helped me join as a fellow when I completed as a fellow for Chollas View, and then from there, and inspire me more to be one of the boards for my community Chollas View community planning group, and also attend other community collaborative Chollas View collaborative meetings. This has been a learning experience for my family since the bottom to the top, because not all of them agreed this was good, because the lack of trust for the city council. When I started attending to all these workshops, I would bring home all this. It was like homework for me, and my kids thought I was for the work for the city, and I'm like, no, I'm just learning. So they were learning with me also about the capital improvement projects, and you could propose one, all the steps, and how can you have a voice even if you don't speak the language. You could be part of this, because if you're a resident, you have a voice, and you're a resident here in the community, and you know what's best for your community. Also, this will help prevent floodings like what happened. I live close, like 3 blocks away from this, and it's hard to see when rain comes. Is stressful for many people. Next to the Array Plaza, where you see the picture in the middle, that's families where they live in mobile homes, and a lot were like scared with the rain, but with all the green infrastructure and working with different departments and city planners, you can make a difference. And that's why you could work with the CIP projects. And also, this also helped me testify with city hall that I've never testified before for the budgets cuttings for green infrastructure, and I didn't know we could do all those things. And yes, this is a good program that it will impact many residents and their families, and you could plant a little seed to, maybe you cannot change the mind right away, but it's hard to gain the trust. But when once you gain it, you can make a difference. Also, one of my sons didn't believe this was good for the community, and he's in 11th grade, and he says that he wants to be an architect. But when I finished this program in the fellow program, he changed his career as an environmental engineer, and it impacts the way you think. With all the city officials in the workshops, you learn a lot that it is important, and it's important for recreational use and for better living space. And it is hard to get the community trust, but having these workshops will allow you to work designs that work for the community and makes a difference. Also, I'm looking forward, keep learning. How can I change my community? Is near to Castana, is trying to purchase the park and recs departments from the utility park to make it a floodable park to prevent this water for flooding homes and also affecting other communities down the watershed. So it's important to all these programs that impact many families. And I'm just grateful for having this opportunity. And if I would have the chance, I will share it with everybody. It doesn't matter. You could learn something. If you don't know anything, you could make a difference. Thank you.
Oh, phenomenal, Jacinta. Thank you so much. So inspiring just to see your leadership within your family and your community. I mean, the amount of transformation that's happened within your own family for your own kids. It's so beautiful to see. So thank you so much for sharing on such a personal level with us. So I think that is all we have. I promised you all some Q&A time, and I apologize, we're not quite getting as much as I was thinking we would, but we do have just a couple of minutes left. So Owen, can I turn it over to you to facilitate the Q&A?
Yeah, absolutely. We haven't had any questions come in yet. So if anyone does have any questions, please feel free to drop that into the questions box. Give it a minute just to see if anything comes through.
Great. And while we're doing that, I'll just recap just a few of the lessons learned here. I mean, I think, certainly prioritizing accessibility for a program like this, the recruitment that happened here was very thoughtful. We designed the program very thoughtfully from a stipend amount perspective, flexibility of the formats, language access, et cetera. Secondly, we really thought about this as a long-term program. So going from the 4 months of training into a year-long organizing opportunity with a broader program, the Choice Blue-Green Vision, that's going to be a decades-long implementation program. That's really critical to, build people's leadership over time and build the partnership and break down the silos and just continue to be persistent in doing that. And then finally to really center residents as co-creators rather than just stakeholders that we're checking a box with, which you all know. We've heard that many times, many places. Are there any questions coming in?
Yeah, so we've had a couple come through. So I will share. People did say that it was very inspiring and wanted to offer their thanks for their stories. So the first question that we had come in was, how did you do outreach to the community in the first place to get people interested in this program?
Yeah, so there were a couple of routes. One is, Groundwork San Diego Chollas Creek has been working in the watershed already for maybe 10 years and has a lot of relationships with residents. And so you heard, Jacinta got involved because her son was part of Earth Lab, which is one of Groundwork's programs. And this opportunity came up and was talked about at an Earth Lab event, and her son got her to sign up. And so there was that kind of direct tapping of people. So there was the outreach at Groundwork events. There was direct tapping of individuals that staff at Groundwork had been thinking about. They'd gotten them involved in an initial community meeting or a walking audit of a site or something like that. And then there was a broadcast of the opportunity through social media channels, et cetera.
Okay, fantastic. So we do have a couple more. The next one that we had was, where did the funding come from for this project?
Yep. So initial funding came from local foundations, San Diego Foundation and the Resources Legacy Foundation. Total funding was like $25,000, so not huge. And then we stacked on additional funding for the long-term organizing fellowship and the Choice Blue-Green Vision work. That's bigger than just the resident empowerment training, and that came from the Pisces Foundation and Partners for Places. And then we have new funding now from the state, from the Regional Water Quality Board to do the mapping of potential blue-green.
Okay, awesome. So we had another one just come in. Do you have any plans to go to other states and organize this training program for underserved communities?
No plans in the works right now, but if there's somebody who's interested in bringing this to you, to wherever you are, please reach out and I'd be happy to talk to you about that and see what we can do.
Okay, and then we had one final question come in. Oh, actually, we just had another one coming too, but one that just came was, what are the headwinds for this type of program to continue?
I would say funding is certainly the biggest headwind. Everybody's in a philanthropic crunch space right now, with grants that had been awarded are being rolled back, and people are concerned about all of the funding sources that are no longer going to be available, and we're waiting to see what kind of the philanthropic community is going to do in terms of stepping up and trying to fill in gaps on that funding, or municipal bonding and that kind of thing. So I think that's the biggest headwind. Otherwise, we thought one of the bigger headwinds was going to be the challenges in the relationship with the city, but this program has overcome those and given city staff members a sense of, oh, this is actually possible. We can do this and sit down, regularly in these cross collaborative spaces with residents.
Okay, and then we had one final question. I think you kind of touched on the other one, but we'll still offer it up. Do you have other communities planned throughout California?
No, not specifically for this program. We are doing some work in Escondido and San Francisco presently, but it's not specific to this program.
Awesome, fantastic. With that, I guess we can wrap up for the day. A huge thank you to April and the fellows for sharing their expertise with us today. Following this webinar, you will receive a follow-up email with the slides from today and a link to the recording. We also ask that you complete the webinar evaluation following the webinar so you can let us know your thoughts on today's session, as this helps us plan for future webinars on topics that are important to you. Thank you again, and we hope to see you at future EFCN events.
Thanks, everyone.